tell us, even the Proverbs tell us, that that kind of person generally does well and is pretty highly regarded in life. Thanks for letting me know about the mic. So when a person has the wisdom to live life well, things generally go well for them. So what if you knew of somebody whose life looked like everybody hated them and everybody had terrible things to say about them? Wouldn't it seem like they were just doing it all wrong? A person who is homeless, always dependent on somebody else for where they're going to sleep at night. A person who can't be bothered to dress for success and to make themselves look any certain special way to be more respectable. A person who just hangs out with a bunch of nobodies, sometimes the poorest and the most unsavory people that you know, and sometimes just a bunch of average Joes that you never pay any attention to for good or bad. A person who's got a tendency to make powerful and influential people mad, and yet who does it over and over again and doesn't seem to learn the lessons that this isn't going well. Would you look at that person and consider them wise? Would you consider them well-adjusted? Would you consider that person somebody who's doing it mostly right? Can I get you to open a Bible to Isaiah 52, page 574 in the Pew Bibles? Starting in verse 13 of Isaiah 52, God's prophet describes a man who is called the servant of God. And the first thing that he says about him in Isaiah 52:13 is, "Behold, my servant shall act wisely. My servant shall prosper. My servant will be successful. My servant will thrive in this life." In Hebrew, the word that's used right there can mean two different things. It can either mean he will act wisely, that is, he will do the right stuff, or it can mean he will have the kind of life of a prosperous, wise person. The word means both things. It's used all the way through the Proverbs. And so what's interesting about it is that's the introduction to a song about this servant that will ultimately prove true about Jesus of Nazareth. And it starts by saying, he will do so well in life. He will succeed and prosper and thrive because he lives with the wisdom that God gives. So if I can borrow a question from our brother Randall, what did that look like? What did it look like for him to thrive and prosper and do so well in his life, living with the wisdom that God gives? Here's what the prophet says. "Behold, my servant shall prosper. He shall be high and lifted up and shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you, because his appearance was so marred beyond any human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind, so shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them they see, and that which they have not heard they understand. Who has believed what he has heard from us, and to whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? For he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. But he had no majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we did not respect him. Surely he has borne our griefs, and he carried our sorrows, and we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed." Does it sound like the description of somebody who's prospering in life? Who is succeeding at living life well? Does it sound like the description of a beautiful lamb? It sounds like somebody who's played their cards all wrong. somebody who misunderstood the assignment, somebody who had all the wrong friends, somebody who wasn't properly socialized, somebody who tried for the good life and just had all the wrong ideas about what that meant, and who ended up broken, lonely, and misunderstood. That's what it sounds like. And that's the person about whom God says, "Behold, my servant shall prosper." Because he did. Brothers and sisters, that is the real wisdom of God. That is the wisdom of the beautiful Lamb of God that looks at this upside-down world and sees the way that it really should be. And yes, that looks upside down to everybody that lives in this world, but that's because we've got it wrong, not him. That leads to real good and real life. Jesus' wisdom was the wisdom of being willing to give up everything to gain the favor of God. His was the wisdom of being willing to be rejected by mankind to be accepted by his Father in heaven. His was the wisdom that trusts in God and just does what God says, even when he's asking us to do something that will get us hated, rejected, and even killed by mankind. He had the wisdom to just do what God said. His was the wisdom that lays down one's life every day for the good of others. The wisdom that sees a life of trust in God is a far richer life than one that says, "Let me make myself rich." Jesus's was the wisdom that says that a truly prosperous life is an eternal one where the rewards of knowing God are everything to us. "Behold, my servant shall act wisely and prosper." In communion, we look to the one who was despised and rejected by men, but who in the eyes of God prospered like no one else ever has.